I would like to call the June Weare School Board meeting to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so a couple logistical things before we get started. So this meeting is for the purposes of conducting Weare School Board business. Per our policy, we follow Robert Rules of Order. But for those of you who have dealt with the Robert Rules, it's a really big, sort of cumbersome, but very important set of procedures. Historically, at least in the decade that I've been here, we have been very lax because this is a 5-person board in a small town, and we do motions, seconds, and votes, but we haven't followed everything. So last month, Rochelle said something. She called a point of order, and I had no idea what to do with that because I have never heard that in 10 years of being on this board. But I think she's right. I think if there was ever a reason for Robert Rules right now with the pandemic, everything that's going on, this is a time to sort of adhere to some of those rules. All right, so per our policy, that's what we follow. So here's a quick, for those of us who are not used to it, some basic rules. Only one subject will be before the group at a time. Each item will be considered as proposed as a motion, which is usually requires a second before going out to vote. Negative motions are generally not permitted. Only one person can speak at a time. So when a motion's on the floor, the order of speaking is the mover of the motion gets to speak first, and then the rest of the board can ask for the floor to give their opinion. The mover is also the last to speak so they can consider rebuttals. All members do have equal rights. Each speaker will be recognized by the moderator prior to speaking. Each should make clear that their intent by saying, "I wish to speak for or against a motion," and give their arguments. Each item presented for consideration is entitled to a full and free debate. Each person speaks once until everyone else has had an opportunity to speak. The rights of the minority must be protected, but the will of the majority will prevail. So I also gave y'all a list of what motions can be made and what you need to say, what they're for, if you need a second, if it's debatable, if it's amendable, and then whether it's decided by majority, chair, or 2/3 majority. So we will run with it and see how we do. So do I have any amendments to the agenda?
I was expecting to see the masks to be back on it because it didn't really get finished last time.
I don't think it was. I don't know, did you, see what the rule says. I am not prepared to speak on the mask tonight. So what did you want to talk? So what in particular did you want to talk about?
So without getting into it, I assumed it would be on the old business.
Okay. So we can put it on the August meeting?
Okay.
Okay. So I'll add it for the August. Great. Anyone else?
With the mask, weren't we supposed to be having an emergency renegotiation?
Did you want to be recognized?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, sure.
Yes. I forgot what happened. Am I recognized now?
Yeah.
Okay. With the masks, wasn't there supposed to be an emergency renegotiation or a negotiation with the teachers' union about that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, is that discussion going to be?
So, I'm trying to think about where that would fall. Because we have public comment before we have discussion, but basically, it was, so I guess I can talk about why I don't have a mask on. So the DHHS had a heat advisory, different guidance that allowed to not have masks when students are seated and for our staff, right? So because of that ruling, Jackie was able to get the union, thank you, union, very much appreciate your flexibility to waive that requirement. And so that mask rule the mask rule was waived as of last week, right?
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was completely waived. It looked like it
Well,
was
no, not
just.
completely waived. Jackie, go ahead.
Students sitting at their desks don't need to wear masks. They do not need to wear.
I don't think your mic's on.
They do not need to wear masks outside. That had changed between this meeting and our last meeting. And sitting at their desks, it's optional. When people are moving around, they do need to wear their masks. That's part of the guidelines. But the union was really great about, we said we'd peg our actions to DHHS. There was some flexibility within that guidance, and we made that happen. And that started Monday.
And because of that, we
Yesterday.
didn't have to have our emergency meeting because it was a negotiation between the administration and the union.
Right, and then, well, there's renegotiation for that ended or ends the school year, is that correct? So then it gets, those kind of decisions get renegotiated for next fall.
Yes. And we'll talk, I think, some about that when we get to the reopening. Where is that? I know we have 2 documents about the fall reopening plan, right? So what's that under, Jackie? Is that under the principal's reports?
I think we have to only have one off, okay. The COVID response plan.
That's it. So we'll talk about that then. So does that meet what you were looking for, or are you looking for something else? Okay, so you,
I hate this microphone. So obviously we're discussing it, and so I really do think it should be put, as an amendment on the agenda, and so we could finish fully discussing it.
I guess I want to understand what, because mask is a giant topic, so I just want to understand what specifically we want to tackle tonight versus what can happen in August. I'm just trying to understand.
Because you guys have made masks optional while sitting down, but not standing up, but yet half of the adults in here have been walking around standing up without masks. So is it a double standard, or does it only apply sometimes? So that's why I think it should be put on the agenda, so we can have a full discussion instead of just this short snippet. Because it should have been under old business.
I understand what you're saying, and I'm trying to weigh that against the notification of the rest of the board to be prepared for it. And so I really want to meet your needs. I just don't know that we're prepared to talk about that tonight. I don't know. You guys can make a motion and you can rule on it, I guess.
I think I would do point of information.
Sure.
It does say under 14 in the draft of the minutes, for school board, proposals for future agenda, reopening plan, masks and student handbooks.
Yep.
I was under the impression that masks would be part of the reopening plan.
Okay. So I guess, Jackie, are you prepared to talk about masks for reopening at this time?
I mean, that's how I saw it
Okay.
addressed.
All right, that's fine. So it'll be under the COVID response plan? Okay. Does that work for you? Sure. Okay. Any other agenda items? Oh, so I'm going to move the summer hiring under personnel because it's a personnel issue, and then other than that, we're good. We are up to public comment. The primary purpose of the school board meeting is to conduct the business of the board as it relates to school policies, programs, and operations. The board encourages residents to attend board meetings so that they may become acquainted with the operation and programs of the school. All official meetings of the board shall be open to the press and public. However, The board reserves the right to meet and to adjourn and to recess at any time. The board also reserves the right to enter non-public at any time in accordance with the provision of RSA 91A:3. To assure that persons who wish to appear before the board may be heard, and at the same time, it may conduct its business properly and efficiently, the board adopts a policy with the following procedures and rules pertaining to public participating in school meetings. 1, public comment will appear twice in the agenda, once at the beginning and once just after new business. 2, all those wishing to speak shall sign in on the form provided. The chair will recognize each attendee who wishes to speak. Any individual desiring to speak will give their name, their address, their group, and if any wishes represented. Public comment will be closed after 10 minutes or whenever there are no further comments, whichever comes first. Presentation should be as brief as possible. Individual presentations should last no longer than 3 to 5 minutes. Written remarks are encouraged. Members of the public are welcome to comment on agenda items. Items that do not appear on the agenda may be raised by the public. However, the board will not comment on these items as public has not been properly noticed. When appropriate, the board may place such items on a future agenda. Consistent with RSA 91-A(3), policy BEDB, and any laws pertaining to student or family privacy rights, the board will not place any matter on the public agenda that is not properly discussed in a non-public session. Complaints regarding individual employees, personnel, and students will be directed to the superintendent in accordance with policies KE and KEB. All speakers are to conduct themselves in a civil manner. The board will not hear personal complaints regarding school personnel nor against any person connected with the school system. The board authorizes its chairperson to terminate remarks of any individual when they do not adhere to the rules established above as to the content or time limitation. The school board will not permit members of the public at meetings to participate in the board's discussion of agenda items. The board authorizes its chairperson to recognize members of the public when the chairperson deems it necessary. Persons appearing before the board are reminded that members of the board are without authority to act independently as individuals on official matters. Thus, questions may be directed to individual board members, but answers must be deferred pending consideration of the full board. Katie, do we have a sign-in sheet? Can I get it? So, for those of you who are not math teachers, each person can speak 3 to 5 minutes, but the total duration is 10. So if 2 people speak for 5 minutes, we can only get to 2 people. Okay, so brief is good, thank you. All right, so I have 4 who would like to speak. So Holly. No, we have a timekeeper tonight, so just if somebody cuts you off, that's why.
Okay, that's fine. Hi, my name is Holly Shelley, 147 High Rock Road. You guys spoke to some of the things that I was going to speak to, so I know a lot of these won't be addressed, but I'm going to speak as my statements are written for the sake of being brief and sticking within time. So I just wanted to address a couple quick things. First of all, although I'm happy for the recent change of students being allowed to remove their masks at their seats, that was always part of the DHHS guidelines for what was allowed. So I was hoping this evening you would speak to why this change came about and why that guideline was not followed in that way in the first place. Secondly, I hope that you also speak to the timing of the negotiations with the teachers union. The last meeting with very clear, specific knowledge of the already impending June 9th teacher union school board meeting. You as a board voted to enter into negotiations with the board immediately. According to the last May issue of Weare in the World, at that time there was no attempt at issue time based on the statement from Wendy to set an earlier meeting. If that is the case and there was never an attempt to set an earlier meeting, then a member of the board, specifically the chair, acted alone against a very clear majority vote. That sets a very bad precedent and I think is against the rules, and I think explanation should be required. I also think that the board should be more transparent with negotiations moving forward. A lot of the public was surprised by the mask rule being baked into the teacher's contract, and it was only after sending an email to Dr. Coe asking where to find the MOA was it posted publicly on the website. And lastly, as you work on creating rules for this for the next school year. And just as a note, the school year doesn't end Friday. You guys are running a summer school program, so I'm not sure why masks wouldn't be taken into consideration for the summer school program. But either way, I hope that you get rid of all the restrictions. At this time, children are the only ones left having to deal with mask wearing, distancing, and other restrictions for the most part. The state of emergency is over. Most states are fully open, and we have known for a very long time that children are least affected by COVID. I am currently withholding registration for my 5-year-old for kindergarten next year and do not intend to register her at all if masks and other things are still required. I would think that other parents may be doing the same. I know it's important for adequacy funding to have kids enrolled, but if I can get normalcy everywhere else but the school, then I would rather her stay home. Thank you.
Thank you. So just since you asked something, you called me out, I would like to speak to that. So when there's a meeting, the union and the board has to agree to the timing. And the union, first available date was today. That is not, we immediately reached out to the union, so I did nothing squirrely there.
Okay,
See,
I just,
okay.
with the statement that was in Where in the World there, at that time it had said there was no attempt to make an earlier meeting, so I don't know
There
why
was-
that would have been misconstrued. And also what happened to June 9th, or June 9th then, because that was a scheduled date according to the meeting last time. Maybe I had that date incorrect, but either way, there, according to that,
The union was available today. We've canceled that meeting because we came up with Jackie and the board, and the union came up with a way to open up the masks.
okay.
That's
I
it.
just think
Nothing,
it
nothing
definitely
nefarious.
should have been clear because it was immediate and there was no immediate meeting
Okay.
set, so.
Neil, did you want to speak?
Thank you. Neil Kirk, Mount Dearborn Road. I wonder if the board could share with the community its policy with respect to critical race theory and how it's being dealt with in the schools. Is it being taught? Is it being discussed? Is there any kind of, quote, indoctrination, unquote, going on? This is very controversial in the news. Commissioner Edelblue has had a piece on this. In today's union leader, Mr. McKim had a piece on this. So I would hope that the board would inform us, and it doesn't have to be a policy, just some sort of a statement perhaps by the superintendent, as to what in fact is going on in a couple of respects. Number one, is there any official board policy? Number two, is there any principal or other administrative kinds of policies? And number three, are there in fact any teachers who are dealing with this subject, and in what way are they dealing with it? Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Leah?
Thank you. Leah Cushman, North Huntington Hill Road. So I just want to say that I find it a little odd that it was stated that the line in the contract talked about CDC guidelines, not DHHS guidelines. So I don't understand why it's okay to go against the contract through like a private meeting when it seems good to you guys, but when the parents are calling for a change, a contract renegotiation was needed. And then my other comment is, as far as next year, if you guys are considering some plans for remote learning, I just want this board to be informed, if you're not already, you probably are, but on the New Hampshire Department of Education website, it lists the rule for remote learning, and it's only for school districts to move into that kind of learning when normal operations are disrupted. So if we are anticipating a disruption, sure, it's okay to have an emergency plan for that, but I hope that you guys aren't thinking that you can go into planning remote learning for, you know, just the entire year, no matter what. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's all I have. Rachel, you have your own line item, so I'm going to move you to that. So I think that's it for public comment. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes dated May 18th, 2021?
I'll make a motion.
Christine made a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Sarah seconded. Do we have any amendments to the minutes? Seeing none, a vote to accept the minutes dated May 18th, 2021, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say no. Those abstain, okay. All right. I have no communications. Jackie, do you have communications? Nope, okay. And so now we're up to Rachel and the PTO. Feel free to come up and talk as much as you want. Yeah. Yeah, you're on TV.
That's so weird. I talk in front of students all day, and adults, it's like totally different. Oh, and a microphone. I have a really loud teacher voice, so this is like a foreign concept to me. Rachel Fairhurst. I live 93 Rolling Hill Drive. I think I had too much time on my hands during the pandemic and decided to come up with this idea to create a golf tournament. For the PTO, I know that fundraising for schools, PTOs, all sorts of organizations has been challenging for lots of reasons the past 18 plus months. So thought it would be fun to try something a little different. Weare's never really hosted a golf tournament before. So on Thursday, July 15th, the Weare PTO is hosting a golf tournament at Stonebridge. To date, I think we have 25 plus sponsors. So I think, don't quote me on the exact numbers, but probably we brought in over $2,800 to $3,200 just in sponsorships. I just opened registration. I kind of plaster, I feel like, every Weare Facebook page, so I apologize when you see the ridiculous flyers. I have some parents who are helping me hang them around the community, but it's super easy to register for the golf tournament. There's prizes, there's food. It's going to be, I hope, a really cool community event. The community has been awesome, and almost all of our sponsors have a direct connection to Weare, which is great, whether it's located in town or owned by a Weare resident but held elsewhere. So that, I felt, was a really positive sign that people are really wanting to support the schools and the community and bridge that, I don't know, what I feel tends to sometimes be a wide gap a lot of times between businesses and schools. So this was sort of my attempt to help bring everybody together in that front and, I don't know, be outside and, you know, it's nice-ish relatively. So thought it'd be fun to play golf. So I don't know if you guys have questions or comments.
I just want to thank you. I've seen it all over the place, and it makes me smile, so thank you so much for doing that. If anyone who is watching this at home or here has questions, how would you like them to reach out to you?
So, I mean, I can bring up the flyer and the camera if you want, but the best way is probably to email me. And my email is T as in Tom, R-U, M as in Mary, the number 3, the letter R, @gmail.com.
Great.
But all the flyers have a QR code on them, so I bet the majority of people have an ability to read a QR code and scan it, and it brings you right to the website, and all my contact is there. You can register on the website. If you still want to sponsor, we have, I'm never going to say no to somebody wanting to sponsor or donate items. Lots of businesses have donated anything from gift certificates to food to raffle items. TD Bank is sponsoring. I mean, I really kind of run the gamut of people who are getting involved, which is awesome. And I need help the day of, so if you aren't a golfer but want to volunteer to help, that's always welcome also. So selling raffle tickets, we have silent auctions. We have someone in town who generously donated tickets to a Bruins game in their suite and a Celtics game for the 2022 season. So there's lots of silent auctions, memorabilia, things like that. So
Great. Are there any board members have questions for Rachel? Nope. Thank you so much.
thanks.
Okay, moving on to committee reports, curriculum. Sarah.
We have a meeting tomorrow for the curriculum meeting, so we'll have an update on the next board meeting in August.
Great. The second committee report is policy. We have 3 policies later in the agenda. To Neil's question, we do not have a CRT policy at this point. If the administration feels that you could talk to this, like this would be a curriculum issue, we could talk to it tonight, or we can put it on the agenda for the August meeting if you'd like.
You know, I think the definition of critical race theory, I would want to hear what somebody put under that. I do not believe we are teaching it at any level K-12.
So maybe we'll put it on an agenda item and have people present what their concerns are. Okay, we'll add that to a future agenda item. Work? Okay, good. So policy. So facilities, Rochelle. You have a facilities
We didn't
report?
meet. We did not meet.
Okay. All right.
I just thought maybe I missed it.
So negotiations, we are starting negotiations. Just a heads up for the rest of the board. Christine and I are switching roles. Brian's no longer going to be a para, so I can take on that lead, and Christine will lead the teacher. Both of us have experience in that area, so that should make sense. Community relations, me, nothing really to report there. Transportation, Daniel?
Nothing to report.
Nothing to report, okay. Kindergarten, Sarah?
Our meeting last month, we kind of brought all of the committee members up to speed on the lengthy history of kindergarten in Weare, and we plan to meet next week to take a tour of both facilities to see what we're dealing with space-wise, and we're also meeting after that to further our discussion.
Great. Wellness, Christine?
So Centerwoods Elementary was pretty much focused on field day, which they had last week, and I heard amazing things about it. And we even got a painted rock out of it. And great job, I guess, by the teachers doing recycled percussion. I heard that was interesting. It was fun to listen to. Middle school, we did, on the 28th, we did a 5K debrief. That was phenomenal. The amount of teachers and administration and volunteers on a Friday afternoon when it was really hot, and the amount of runners that came out was wonderful. It was great. Sarah and I joined that. Well, volunteered, didn't join the run. I missed the last meeting because I had my own school commitment, but looking at the notes, they talked about field day, which is actually tomorrow. You can see the rock wall that's out in the parking lot that the kids are very excited about. The cafeteria is going to be doing a barbecue, and then this Thursday at 5 p.m. is the drive-through 8th grade promotion.
Right, and that's a good heads up for school board people. It's a great thing to attend, support our schools and our students. It's been a lot of fun. I know I'll be there. Christine will be there. Yeah. Okay, so moving on to administration reports. SAU board report is the superintendent self-evaluation, which you all should have a copy of, and non-public will do some assessment. Principals gave us a strategic plan accomplishment, which is later in the agenda, so we don't have reports from them. Next is the manifest, Chris, and the reconciliation.
Yep, so the manifest is on DocuSign. And then the manifest this month, we are working to both do the purchases that were agreed on a few months ago. The tractor had been purchased, the ducts had been are encumbered, cleaning the ducts, and the paving at Centerwoods, which proved to be a larger project than we had anticipated, with all of the water flow issues that had come up in that meeting. So all three of those are encumbered on the bottom line, and we're still working through the access points because we want to make sure that we access E-rate funding. So we're trying to figure out how to do that with the right timing. We wouldn't want to leave that funding behind. So the bottom line that you see here of $282,592 or $529.29, we anticipate the we anticipate the amount that is given back to taxpayers, as we promised, is going to be over that 300,000, in that range, and because of the revenue that is still coming in. We haven't fully closed out the Learn at Home program revenues that we are getting from Hennecker, so you'll see that when the books are closed. Any questions?
So you mentioned the paving at Center Woods is a little bit more. Are we still going to be able to take care of the drainage and still take care of that?
Yeah, the quote we got had extensive work to the drainage. Not to get too technical on it, but they're basically doing a water pathway along the main entrance down near the parking lot to flow it into the woods as opposed to out onto the onto the pavement areas.
And will it go down towards the playground down that area? Will it all paved?
Yeah, it feeds all down, and then there's also some water issues on the other side as well. So they'll all feed kind of downstream so that they don't go over the pavement.
And can it be done over the summertime?
Yes, yeah,
Excellent.
that's the anticipation.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Chris from the board? Nope. Okay, so we're up to personnel. Do I have a motion to accept the resignations of Sarah Marcinowitz, Christy Towns, and Emily Pino?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, Sarah made the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it with reservations.
Yeah, exactly. Do we have any discussion? All those in favor of accepting these resignations, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Okay.
Are we allowed to say anything about what was in the letters? Or no?
There is, I mean, they're public. Sure.
We're losing some fantastic staff, and it comes down to having to financially take care of their families, and I really hope that we can keep that in mind when we open up negotiations this summer, so that we don't lose any more. I'm very sad to lose these two people.
Agreed.
I think one of the things that concerned me in one of the letters was some of the social media information with regards to teachers and staff in Weare. And I just, as a board member, want to encourage people in the town to model positive, respectful behavior, because I think our kids hear and see that, and I want them to be proud of the town, and I want the teachers here to be proud to be here, and I think that was discouraging to read from a veteran teacher.
Anyone else? Great. Can I get a motion to accept the nominations of Casey Horrell, Justin Chase, Kaylee Zervos, and Ariel Friedman?
I'll make a motion to accept.
Christine made a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Sarah has a second. Do we have any questions or discussion about these nominations? No? Okay.
So they sounded like they had very good qualifications, and I like that we do have some veterans.
Yeah, I'm really excited about one of them in particular, but I'm not going to call that out. So, all right. Any more discussion? No? Okay, so all those in favor of approving these nominations, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Okay, we're up to policies. This should be quick, unlike last month. So the first one, policy GADA, is something that we are required to have. It requires us not to give recommendations for someone who is accused of sexual improprieties. So we don't do that anyway, so this is the state mandated policy that says we won't do that. Do I have a motion to accept GADA?
Motion to accept.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Do we have discussion? No? Okay, all those in favor of approving GADA as written and waive the second reading, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstained. Okay. The second one is, for those of you who are at the SAU meeting, you already know this, but we had a policy. We took out the procedures because it is our policy not to have procedures in the policies. We have a place for that. However, when we were audited, we were asked to put the procedures back in. So based on the audit, this is the putting in the procedures that we took out because we don't do that. Okay, that's all that is. So do I have a motion to readopt DAF with the changes?
So moved.
Christine, so moved. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Sarah seconded. Do we have discussion? Okay, all those in favor of accepting DAF and waiving the second reading, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstained. Okay. The last two are GBEC and ADB, which are the drug-free workplace and drug-free school policies. This is a simple readopt. Do I have a motion to accept the readopt of GBEC and ADB?
So moved.
Christine moved. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second. Okay, do we have discussion? Okay, all those in favor of accepting GBEC, readopt, and ADB, and waiving second reading, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstained. Okay, and then finally, under personnel, Jackie, you want to speak to summer hiring?
I am looking for someone in between, we're going to do some hiring, and I need one of the board members and maybe a backup person to sign on behalf of the board for those hires, so I can get people contracts.
Do I have a motion for summer hiring signatory?
So moved.
So moved to.
You?
Okay. So Christine has made a motion that I can sign for summer hires in the break of the 2 months. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Do we have discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of me being able to sign, actually, can I do an amendment? We ruled on this and then we do an amendment. Help me with Robert rules. So my amendment would be, if I am not available, Christine can sign, would be my amendment. So then we can move on the amendment, and then we can move on the original one, right? Do I have a second on my amendment?
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion on the amendment?
Just a question, do you physically have to be at the SAU? Or, so if one of us was away, it's more of like incapacitated kind of
Yeah.
thing? Okay. All right.
Yeah. Yeah, if somebody breaks my legs or something.
We can continue, as of right now, we can continue to do that electronically.
Okay.
Okay. So discussion on the amendment? No? Okay. All those in favor of Christine being the second, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Do I vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Nobody-
Opposed? Abstained? Okay, so motion is amended to include Christina's second. Back to the original motion. Those in favor of me being able to sign for new hires during the 2-month interim, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And I'm going to abstain because it's me, but, okay. So, policies, personnel. Now we're up to handbook approval. So I believe y'all had a copy to look at it. I would personally like to say you guys did an amazing job. It really reads more coherently than I've seen in the past. I think you did a great job. I sent a couple little amendments written. Do y'all want to present anything or just have us, do you need us to make a motion? So we need a motion to approve the handbooks as written.
So moved.
Okay, Christine moved. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, do we have any board discussion around the handbooks?
I just wanted to make a comment and thank you because I had asked last year if you wouldn't mind, just for consistency for parents, but also for kids, and I appreciate that you took all that time to put that together, but also make it make sense for both the schools. So thank you, that was a lot of work.
Yeah, I think it's great and coherent and wonderfully laid out. My only little, I guess, tweak to think about as we move forward would be hats and hoods. Would just be, I don't know if that's on anyone's radar, but.
What was that?
Hats and hoods.
Oh.
So just as a like, as someone that works in a school that allows them, just as a curious point, but I think everything looks wonderful and thank you for all your work.
Anyone else? Okay, the motion is to approve the handbook as written. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Okay. Now we're up to the copier plan. I'm trying to pause the 2 seconds between meetings, which is Greg asked me to do, but I'm not doing so great. So, okay, so right now, we're going to Chris to talk about the copier plan.
So this year, I have been working with a company called Specialized Purchasing Consultants on our copiers and printers in the district, in the SAU. And what I have found with them is that they can, so this company will bid out to all of the companies who provide copiers and printers, and they do so with other districts. It's a I always forget the word, but they're doing it with other districts, so they get better pricing. It's you know, it's kind of like when you're in a health insurance plan that does the same. Your prices go down as you have more volume. So throughout the process of working with them, they found that we had a lot of spaces where we could save money, and where school districts being one of the biggest places that can spend that can save money with working with them. So the bid actually went out today. So you don't have anything to vote on today because we don't have those bids back to accept a specific bid moving forward. But their anticipation is that they can save us, the SAU-wide, approximately $46,000 a year for the next 5 years. That's with buying out equipment that we have right now that are under leases that fair market leases that we probably shouldn't have gone into in the first place, taking care of all that, and then at the end of the 5 years, because we no longer are buying out those copiers, we'll actually anticipate additional savings when we do our next 5-year plan. And so I really appreciate the work that this company has done with us to kind of clean it up. We're going to get better equipment because we did a walkthrough in all the buildings in the SAU a couple Thursdays ago, and it was there was a lot of comments about equipment that just didn't work, that were basically large, expensive printers. So we're going to move forward, and they do a lot of work about right-sizing the air. Like, you know, if we don't need a printer in an area, they help us work through that, and then the next piece of that would be to look at purchasing a program called PaperCut that helps us have secure printing, and it allows users to type in a code or use their card to access their prints. So all really positive things. The savings will pay for that program by quite a bit, it seems. So I'll have a bid for you in August, but that was the update I wanted to give you all.
It's great.
Funny story, if I may. So Chris and I have a friendly competition going on about who can influence cost savings. And so we have a thermometer in my office, one for me and one for Chris. And at this moment right now, we are neck and neck. This just put him way over. And so I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Anyone have questions for Chris about the copier plan? No? Okay, staff retention. That would be Jackie or Natasha?
there's there's some resignations. There are also, we have a number of support staff resignations, particularly at Center Woods. And, I think a number of things have come together. The support staff has a contract, a 3-year contract, which is wonderful. But a lot has changed, especially at that pay range in the last 18 months. And so we're struggling, and right now, we can't fill IEP needs with our staffing at Center Woods. Jess, are we at 12 out of 18 staff out?
As of for paras, we're at 12 out of 18 who have resigned or retired, and we just put forward 1 applicant today, so now we're at 11.
So one of the things we are trying to do, I mean, this is catastrophic, and looking creatively, this is a COVID impact, and in order for us to support students coming back, we're looking at, can we use some of the grant funding creatively? I don't know what that looks like, whether we could do something like signing bonuses or retention bonuses, whether we can go back to the union and talk about the salary grid and do an interim agreement. But I just wanted to alert you, this is dire.
I think it's important to include retention with hiring. Is it possible that anyone might come back if there was something changed, or do you think?
We'd need to look at that.
Okay, so there is a possibility?
Yeah. A lot of these have come, over the last couple weeks, and so really this was just to alert you that we're going to think creatively and try to move forward with something to get some people back or to attract new people.
Okay.
Okay. And I know historically, the board has, had committees to try to look into what we can do to help with that. So if that becomes something that would be helpful, let us know.
I think long-term, that gets folded into the negotiations, but also, yes.
Right. Okay. Does anyone on the board have anything to say about staff retention? Okay. We need to do it, clearly. Okay, COVID response plan. Jackie.
So the COVID response plan fills a couple roles. One, in order to get this COVID grant funding, we have to submit a COVID response plan / reopening plan. I don't love the term reopening since we reopen every year. Really what we're talking about is how are we going to respond to the impact of COVID. What I'm suggesting is, I think the decision matrix we came up with seemed like a good idea at the time when we didn't have tools from the state. Now we have tools from the state that looks at impact on the schools, and I've included that in the reopening plan. I'm sorry, impact on the schools, did I say that? So it looks at community transmission, but not in isolation. Does the community transmission have impact on staffing, on student absences? Are we seeing it in our schools? That is mostly how we operated this year. And so you'll see that between that and the DHHS guidelines, we're proposing a spectrum of responses just like we did this year. I expect, given how transmission is going down, we have very few cases in the state, the impact is really low. I expect we're going to open school in a pretty normal way. However, if something happens and the impact increases, the state agrees that the impact increases, we need to respond. And so I think Sean and Jess have both outlined some of the ways that we'll respond. might mean increased distance. Increased distance at the middle school means a hybrid schedule, at least, we'll try to rethink that, but we couldn't guarantee the 3 feet distance that was recommended without going hybrid at the middle school. Currently, there were some of the public comments, the current MOU does reference both DHHS and CDC. The MOU came about as a way to ensure our teachers felt safe coming back into the building. We would not have been able to open school without an MOU. It is an area where safety is an area we're required to negotiate, so we couldn't just say, hey, we're not going to talk to you about this. However, what we didn't have at that point was the grid from the state about decision-making. I think that makes a lot of difference in how we approach this. And it's not just me making up something. We're grounding it to guidance coming from people who do this work. We needed something flexible, and we did this year shift to remote purely based on school conditions. So that's what you see before you. It doesn't have any hard and fast, we're going to wear masks at the beginning of the school year, we're not going to wear masks, because I anticipate over this summer there's going to be some directive guidance coming from the state that speaks to that. And I think that's what we need to base things on. However, it's the board's prerogative. My request, and the only way I can figure out how to navigate this, is to have that DHHS, CDC as the guidepost.
All right, so do we have anyone on the board who wants to talk to the reopening plan? I think Rochelle does, right? Go ahead.
I'm just wondering how the rest of the school year and summer is going to go. I said, I'm wondering how the rest of the school year and summer is going to go as far as masks.
So I anticipate that, the guidance as of right now, it hasn't been officially updated on the website, but we responded based on what was publicly, they did a press release, and we responded. I spent my weekend trying to be able to have our students have more normalcy for this last week of school, to have them be able to leave with a little bit more of that. It is what we all want. So I anticipate going into some of summer school, it'll be masks are optional while students are seated, masks are optional outside, but when moving in the hallways, the guidance continues to be from both DHHS and from CDC that unvaccinated people remain masked. And so if we're pegging our practices based on that guidance, that is what I see.
So the adults can walk around without masks, but not the children. The adults get oxygen, but not the children.
All right.
I have a question about, based on one of the questions from public comment, can you just speak about any plans to offer full remote, to offer a learn-at-home option without it being a necessary move because of personnel or the matrix?
So we do not have plans to have a learn-at-home option, which is the fully remote. I believe that VLAX will have the capacity for students. I do not think there's a huge need, and I I don't think we have the capacity. We're struggling to hire for the in-person. And so I do not see that. That's a full remote option. We are not planning to start the school year at the middle school in a hybrid schedule. Something drastic would have to change between now and September. However, if something drastic does change, it's recommended that we provide physical distance. Right now, how we know how to do that, it would be a hybrid schedule.
But there are not currently plans. Correct.
I mean, I don't anticipate, given New Hampshire's in great shape, so I'm hoping we are starting as normally as possible.
Anyone else on the board? Sure.
I know I've asked in some capacity before, as far as summer school goes, obviously, I would assume there's no remote, and I don't think that's really a good option for people who have exemptions or things like that. So is there a plan, or what plan is it? Is it the same plan? I know that previously the plan was, or similar to, if someone didn't want their child to wear a mask, they were going to just have to do remote. If that's not an option, we can't not offer them to have summer school, so how does that go about?
We've been working with families on exemptions, if those are necessary. And it would be masks when they're walking around. So I don't anticipate that most of the day will be with a mask on. So if you're walking in the hallways, but in summer school, I think that's less of a thing. The transport is less of a thing. You're with your group and you're doing work in the classroom or outside. And outside, we're going to try to be outside as much as possible. And outside, you don't have to wear masks.
Right, that's correct. I guess it was just, there was some reports from some parents that they were told to just go remote, and I just wanted to make sure that wasn't going to happen. Also, if someone's exempt, I think walking around even with it is technically not exempt for them.
If somebody's exempt, they don't have to wear a mask.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I wanted to find out. Okay.
I do have a question about that. For them to be exempt, do they have to show you a doctor's note?
We have a process and a form that does include a doctor's recommendation, yes.
Okay, anyone else have questions about the COVID response plan? Do you need a motion to approve the plan? You do.
Yes, please.
I have one more question.
Sure.
Sorry. So as of right now, I know you had requested that we use DHHS and CDC as a guidepost. As of right now, for the plan for next school year, is the mask, is it currently written that we follow DHHS, or would that need to be proposed and voted on?
I think as part of, the first page of the plan speaks to DHHS as, in that grid about the impact of COVID on school. I guess there's another thing that I forgot to mention. To shift to remote for more than 2 days, I need approval from the state. I have to talk to the commissioner about that. And so the mass, somebody spoke to, that the mass shifts to remote won't happen. I don't think we're ever going back to that. We didn't really do that in the Weare School District. That happened a little bit more at the high school. But that hasn't happened since April vacation, even though we've had cases that we've had to navigate. So we know more on how to deal with this in a way that's a lot less intrusive, and the impact has gone way down. If we were opening school tomorrow, or next week, right now, the guidance is unvaccinated students should wear masks. The dispensation was for heat, that we had flexibility around heat. And we're in the middle of June, and it's hot. So I am fully expecting we get additional guidance with the ending of the state of emergency, with the decrease in cases. I fully expect DHHS gives us additional guidance about mask use for students.
Anyone else? Okay. Do I have a motion to accept the COVID response plans as documented?
So moved.
I have a motion from Christine. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second from Sarah. Do we have any more discussion?
Can we possibly wait until August to do a back-to-school plan?
Could I request that an approval so I can submit it with the grants? And Stoddard is doing this. We're revisiting it in August to just see, because we'll have more information.
Okay, so do you want to make an amendment to the motion to say that we accept for the purposes of filing with the state, and then we revisit in August?
Yes.
Okay. Do
And
we have- No, so do I have a second for the amendment?
I'll second.
Okay, and then Jackie wanted to speak to that?
The other thing with this plan, we're actually required to talk about it publicly and revisit it every 6 months. And we can do it more often than that if you want to, but we're required to. So we have it on the agendas for June and January for the next 3 years. Hopefully we don't need to be talking about this for 3 years, but.
Okay, so any more discussion on the amendment to file with the state and then revisit in August? Those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Those abstained? Okay, so now we're ruling on the entire motion, which is we accept the COVID response plans as documented for filing with the state, and we will revisit the plan in August, and it sounds like in January and June forever. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Those abstained? Great, okay. Our next topic is the strategic plan accomplishments, and we will start with our lovely principals. So, Sean, you look more ready, so why don't you start?
I'm not sure I'm looking more ready, but well, I'll pretend. It's really as presented. I would just make the comment that I always feel really good about the school by the time we're done writing this up, because even during this COVID-impacted year, all the amazing things. So kudos to the staff and the students for being a part of some really productive and meaningful learning that has brought us forward throughout this year to a good place. So unless the board has questions, it's as presented.
Do you have questions for Sean? No, great. Jess?
As I appear less ready? No, just kidding. I just wanted to echo what Sean had said, and just something that might be unique to my plan. When we created our strategic plan just over five years ago, my plan went to 220. It didn't go to 221. So what I did is I expanded on goals that were kind of ongoing from 220, which is why you see 220 and 221.
Questions for Jess?
I just have a comment for both. It's been an amazing year, and at the beginning of the school year, I didn't think amazing would have a positive connotation, but it does. And being a parent of two children that want to be in each of your schools, being a teacher that has been in the schools, it has been an amazing year this year of what the kids learned, what they were able to do. There were a lot of challenges, and some challenges weren't crossed over, but I think there were a lot of chances for learning. And, your staff and the students, it's been amazing. So thank you both, and please thank your staff, and I hope that they have some time to rejuvenate and relax over the summer, because it's been quite a haul for the last year and a half.
So true. Anyone else on the board?
Yeah, I just want to thank you for the communication throughout this whole thing. There's been a lot of changes, a lot of new things to navigate. Teachers and admin were all in positions that they've never been in before, as were students and parents, and I feel like I definitely felt like I knew what the plan was and what was happening, and I really appreciate that.
Anyone else? Great. You guys did great. Thank you so much.
So the only follow-up is, as Jess alluded to, we're at the end of this plan, so the work that we're doing right now, that'll go into our Leadership Institute and we'll bring to you in August, is the next edition or iteration of the strategic plan.
Great. Looking forward to it. All right, the last of the new business, for those of you who are new, every year at the retreat, we set the goals for the school board for the year, and then we review them at the end of the year to see how we did. Obviously, with COVID, things have been a bit different, but this is the review. So just for those of you who don't have it in front of you, our goals for this year was to develop a fiscally responsible budget that meets the needs of students, encourage transparency in spending, communicate budget needs early and often, negotiate a viable teacher's contract, facilitate a strategy to bring full-day kindergarten to voters, regularly review assessment data in order to encourage and support strategies that foster high student achievement, and develop a strategy to foster staff retention. So we can go by these one at a time or overall, what are the board's thoughts on developing a fiscally responsible budget that meets the needs of students? Did we meet that need?
Can we ask, do you feel that you had what you needed this year? Because we were able to pass a budget, which I was pleased about.
So we're currently operating under a default budget. We passed a budget for next year. We are currently operating under a default budget.
Okay. So
Right, but our goal was to develop a budget that meets the needs. So we developed one for next year, right? And that passed, so
Yes.
it seems pretty good. Encourage transparency in spending. Any thoughts on that? No? No? Okay. It's fine. You don't have to have comments. This is just keep this in your head. I just want to give everyone a voice. If you have something you want to talk about, just holler, wave your hand, whatever. Communicate budget needs early and often. Negotiate a viable teacher's contract. Which I believe we did. The strategy, this is strategy, so before Sarah gets nervous, it was a strategy to bring full-day kindergarten to voters, because we knew with COVID that we couldn't bring it up this year, but we wanted to start having a strategy, and part of that is the committee that you're working on. Regularly review assessment data, develop a strategy to foster staff retention. I think that's what we're doing now. I don't know that we've succeeded yet. So think about these goals, think about how you would rate us, because that's important, and then think about which one of these goals we need to bring forward for next year and what you would add to it, so that when we get together in August at the retreat, we'll look at what we think our focus is going to be for next year. Okay? Questions? All right. We are up to the second public comment. Looks like Leah.
Come up again. Leah Cushman, North Huntington Hill Road. There was a comment about how the guidance currently states that those who are not vaccinated will have to wear masks. And I just want the members of the board and the school administration to know that there was a bill that came through the legislature, HB 220, and it did pass the House and the Senate, and it's on its way to the governor, and if signed, that won't be legal. You won't be able to have a policy that's different, discriminates based on vaccination status, since you are a subdivision of government. That won't be allowed, just for future planning.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so proposals for a future agenda. Anyone?
We'd mentioned, talk about the mask part of.
The mass, we're going to
and
talk.
then CRT.
CRT.
The COVID response.
And COVID response plan. And then the transportation study is longer term. Anything else?
Can I clarify, just so, I was thinking we were bringing the COVID response plan back in August. Is masks a separate conversation, or is it part of that conversation?
I think it's part of it. It was just, I had written it down when it was talked about by itself, and then, yeah, no.
Okay, so we're up to non-public. So because we're streaming, I did get a text that we had some sound issues. Hopefully those were resolved. If not, I will hear about it, I'm sure. So we're going to go to non-public, so if you're not in that discussion, we ask you to leave. When we're done with non-public, you're welcome to come back in. We're going to turn off streaming for non-public, and then we will turn it on for any votes or motions that come out of non-public. Welcome back. So do I have a motion to accept the leave of absence from the teacher?
I'll make a motion to accept.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so Christy made a motion, Daniel seconded. So all those in favor of accepting, that is loud, the teacher's leave of absence request, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Abstained. Okay, so I believe we have no other motions at this point. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
Yeah. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, Daniel made a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Christine seconded. Okay, all those in favor of going home, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Don't you dare. Abstained. Okay, great. So we will see y'all on August 17th. The retreat is open to the public. That's at 2 o'clock. And then the board meeting is at 6. Right?